She was essentially a self-taught painter. She was in her father's studio briefly when she was 11 or 12 years old. Her father was a very skillful pastelist, but he died when she was 12. And she was left with her mother and brother, and they were not well off, and her mother shortly married again, and she complained that her stepfather took her money. She was contributing to the support of her family in her middle teenage years. And the portrait of her brother, which is at the beginning of the exhibition, which is signed and dated, indicates that she was 18 years old when she painted it. She can have had very little formal training because as a woman, of course, you know that she was ineligible for the Royal Academy schools. Women could not, in any official sense, draw from the male nude, or indeed even from statuary, unless they could do so privately. So she wasn't taught to draw in the traditional way that a French artist was groomed from the middle of the 17th century well on into the 19th. This is a pretty major disadvantage. Possibly, she painted 3/4 and half-length portraits because anatomy was somewhat difficult for her. But she was an extraordinary self-starter. And as you know, she was also a person who wrote her memoirs, and she has controlled the image that we have of her very carefully. There are some things she tells us which are really useful to the study of the artist. One of which is that she was interested in music, she was interested in theater, she was evidently socially rather gifted, she was a good conversationalist, and she demonstrates in her work, and we have other evidence, that she was an extremely beautiful woman. She was therefore accepted socially to a rather unusual degree for a person whose father was a pastelist and whose stepfather sold jewelry. She had access to her clients in a very immediate way because of her own personal diplomatic and social skills, and she was very much interested in giving her sitters a good experience. One of the things she writes is that they should be comfortable. And if you look at the pictures, you'll see that they're almost always leaning on something. There are a lot of large cushions and velvet sofas in evidence. And after she goes to Italy and starts to look a bit at the landscape and paint landscape backgrounds, the arms of the chairs were still there. You see these odd rocks covered with grass, and behind you see a waterfall. And of course the sitter was in the studio in a chair. It was very important to be able to converse with your clients and entertain them. And if you did, you got a more lively image. And it has to be assumed that that is one of the reasons that she was so gifted at portraiture and that her sitters appear so lively.